Behind every farm, winemaker, bottle, and grape lies an untold story.
One of the funnest questions I think we could do today is, for you personally, why Chenin? You are super talented winemakers. You're impossibly gifted. I don't have a doubt in my mind, if you chose to, you could have built a life around Sauvignon Blanc. You could have built a life around Chardonnay or Cab Franc or anything you wanted to. Well, you did Cab Franc brew, but you could have done anything, right? So let's start with, why Chenin? How did that capture you? Why did you decide to put your flag in the ground for Chenin for your brilliant careers? Brew, can we start with you?
Sure. The reason why I picked Chenin Blanc to specialize in for Raats family wines is that Chenin to me is a perfect conductor of terroir. So whatever soil type you plant it on, it conducts that and it relays it to the grapes, which obviously eventually ends up in the wine. So if you plant it on granitic soils, it shows that minerality, that citrus lime, that sort of linearity, that beautiful acidity. If you plant it on sandstone soil, it shows more tropical fruit. It has more width and breadth. It's a more richer wine. Maybe doesn't have the acidity, but it has that richness. And when I started Raats back in 2000, there was, I also looked at what will make South Africa special in the world of wine, because we have to sort of enter the world market, and Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc and most other varieties from a New World point of view has been taken, but taking consideration that South Africa had more than half the world Chenin Blanc plantings, for me it was a no-brainer. We could go and peg our flag in the world market of wine and say, this is what makes us different and this is what makes us special, like New Zealand have done with Sauvignon Blanc or Argentina have done with Malbec. There was that aspect as well, which was for me very attractive, is that can show the world what makes you different and can show the world what makes you similar. And then, as I said, that Chenin Blanc is so a superconductor between terroir, and it shows it in the wine, it shows it in the grapes. And that's what I wanted to make. I wanted to make wines that reflect the uniqueness of where I come from.
That's awesome, Brew. And it's awesome to hear. Listen, we know passion drives all of us. You wake up and you do what makes your heart thump. But I also appreciate that you really had a commercial plan, a commercial strategy, a business plan to say, well, why would I go do this when and everyone else is doing this, and I can be the best at here. I think it's one of the reasons you've been so successful. You did it first.
Yeah, no, for sure, Robin. And you must also remember when I started off in 2000, Chenin Blanc has been grown in South Africa over 350 years, but it was used for distilling brandy, making bulk cheap wine, and it was definitely not vogue. And people really thought I was crazy specializing in Chenin, because it was used for everything except quality winemaking. So it was not such an obvious choice 21 years ago. And what people have thought were our weakness now has become our strength, because we committed and we tried to improve it. And today, I don't think, if you say Chenin Blanc, I don't think anybody will think twice about South Africa and obviously France. But I mean, from a New World perspective, that's the first name that came about. And there's a lot of people that have contributed, and especially the Chenin Blanc Association, which I was one of the founder members also about 21 years ago. We've put a lot of effort in trying to establish a Chenin Blanc category for South Africa. And I must say, it's all been coming together. And I think Chenin Blanc have got now the recognition, the connection between Chenin and South Africa that makes us unique, have already happened now.
Yeah, without a doubt. If you go to a good wine shop and you go to a Chenin area or somewhere that features Chenin, it's all South African French. You might find one lowly bottle of, Pine Ridge out of California that's half Viognier. But the rest of the section is going to be South African French.
Yeah.
All right, Vincent, why Chenin?
I think this Chenin Blanc is got a good adaptation to the Loire Valley climate. Good potential of course production, but also as Bruwer said, the quality and the capacity to this grape to give an expression of the terroir. Yeah, we've got this in Vouvray. We grow this grape for 200-300 years, and even with the climate changing now, we can see this grape has got a very good capacity of adaptation, and we can still do all the range of the wine and sparkling, dry, semi-sweet. So it's a beautiful grape for that. Yeah.
I've often thought, much like Pinot Noir, something that I've loved about Chenin is it tells the story of its not only its terroir, but its vintage very well. Where I find, whether it's old vine, whether it's Le Clos, the story they tell every year is so remarkably different. You can have 4 vintages in your cellar and you'll know it's the same producer. You'll know it's the same style, if you will, but you have 4 remarkably different wines. It makes it wildly exciting to someone that loves Chenin. It also may be a little daunting to someone that doesn't. I think, when we talk about New Zealand, what New Zealand did brilliantly is they created a extraordinary consistency of product over the years, over the decades. I often think it was kind of the genius behind Anheuser-Busch. And if you talk to beer people, beer snobs want to say that Budweiser's bad and buy this little craft beer. But I will tell you, the brewers that make Budweiser in these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of cases every year, so consistently, so clean, so perfect, so year after year the same. These are some of the most brilliant brewers in the world. You can't do that kind of volume and be the same. And I actually think this is what's happened in New Zealand to a great extent. The consumer has learned, if it says Marlborough and it says New Zealand, I don't care what's on the label. I don't care what year it is. I know I'm going to like it because it's going to be impossibly consistent to something I already know. I think that's powerful. That's how huge brands are scaled. But so I think for Chenin, this is an amazing advantage and then a little tricky, right? Because you might have loved a wine one year and then 3 vintages later, you're like, wait, is that the same wine? It's not. It's awesome because the story is told through the vineyards. But I think it requires more education on all of our part to explain the why and all that stuff, because it's not the same. I will tell you guys a quick story. And I found it heartbreaking because I thought, what if you were a customer today that decided to try Chenin for the first time? For the first time ever, you're like, I read about Chenin. I watch these cool Zooms with Kid Classics. Today's my day. I'm going to get my first Chenin by the glass. And you got something that sweet. And I've often thought, for every one customer that says, hey, tell me, why is this so sweet, and gets an education, there's probably 50 that are like, I'm not doing that again, right? So one thing I've always thought of is, how can we educate the bigger commercial audience in a way that doesn't involve you talking to them or me talking to you? We just can't do it, right? We're not in every store every day. And whether there's a label that says like super dry or very like something that helps that consumer find more confidence, because maybe if they picked up this by the glass or this by the glass, that moment, that first moment could have been, I love Chenin for the rest of my life. So can we talk about this a little bit? How do we help educate everyone in a way that's not so handheld, spoon-fed, us at a table at night, to understand the styles of Chenin so they can not only fall in love with Chenin, but know the Chenin they like and why? I know I've really meandered this question pretty badly, but I thought about it a lot. This was just last week, and I kind of put it in my notes to talk to you about. How do we do a better job helping people understand the styles so they don't get...
Yeah, I was going to say something, Rob, just regarding Vouvray, because it is I wouldn't say a criticism, but it is a feedback that we often get. But I think in this instance, it's important as well to see the difference between a single block wine like Le Clos, of which we make a very limited quantity. It's 2 hectares, well, 5 acres of really old vines. And out of these 100 cases that come to the USA, it's true if you compare the 2008 to the 2014 or 2017, 2008 was semi-sweet. But this is a very unique wine, and it's in a small quantity. So for those kind of wines, yes, it's kind of the beauty of it. That's where you see that, especially the vintage difference. But if you take the Vouvray Sec, which is what is made in most quantity, what we sell the most of, that is dry every year. I think one thing, the perception of dryness that we find often in the New World countries where we sell our wine, is that people look at the analysis before they taste the wine. And Vouvrays, we can have dries. Somebody will taste it, they'll say there's 2 grams of residual sugar. And when they look at the analysis, they'll see there's 6. So there's dryness and perception of dryness. And I think often with the professionals, especially the SOMs, etc., they have tendency, before they even taste the wine, they want to know the residual sugar. And I would challenge them with Vouvray is taste the wine. If it says dry on the label, taste it before you see that there is maybe 4 or 5 grams residual sugar, because it is a dry wine. And you can't compare a wine of similar residual sugar from a New World country to often to a Loire Chenin.
And also historically, we've also Vouvray has got a big market of semi-sweet wine in US market. And now I think it's still working, but the new generation want to really make a dry style. And I think it's semi-sweet style is not what we want to do anymore. But it's still a market in US and the UK market. So we're really looking to change that and to give a better, an easier definition of the Vouvray still wine, and make it dry style and not semi-sweet or off dry. So it's one thing we really work also on it to change that.
But to also communicate a little bit on the back label, and of course a dry wine from Vouvray should always, if it says sec on the label, it should be a dry wine.
Yeah, it's confusing here though, because I think, again, I don't mean the people that study wine, I just mean people that like wine. Mm-hmm. Sec might scare them away as meaning sweet. There's no intuitive, it could say it on the bottle, it doesn't mean anything to a lot of the people reading that label. And if it means anything at all, it could mean, oh, wait a minute, sec means sweet. It's just tricky, right? And this is something that, we've been working at this for 2 decades because we want everyone to drink Chenin. We want everyone to fall in love with Chenin like we love Chenin. And it continues to be this hurdle to say, how do we get everyone to understand what they're buying and why?
Rob, maybe from a South African point of view, we have discussed, I'm glad that you actually raised this point, because of course it is always that, how do you, without us being there, that the consumer can pick up a bottle with confidence. Now, we've pretty much encouraged all our members, which is pretty much everybody, that to make dry style. I think we looked at it the other day. It's only 0.6% of people in South Africa that actually does not make their Chenin Blancs dry, sweet. So it's over 99% of people that now make their Chenin Blanc in a dry style. So I think we've been very much aware of that. I think, I haven't tasted a sweet South African Chenin Blanc for quite some time, or off dry, semi-sweet, and I think what the Caremes have pointed out, those ones that still are usually from, a special vineyard or a very special a release, and it's very small. But I think for 99.5% of South African Chenins that you'll find in the market currently is definitely dry. And we used to say dry was, over 6, but we've actually moved it down to 4 grams now. So, there was legislatively and in direction for the Chenin Blanc Association, we've really been pushing to actually make sure everybody move in that direction, which most people have done. Because, as much as problem it is, from a producer, you also don't want to confuse the market. The wine industry is already so diverse, and there's already so many things that consumers don't know. That's also why we don't call it Steen anymore, because in the past, they used to call Chenin Blanc Steen in South Africa. And we got 3 historians to actually go and find out for us why did they call it Steen. And the only 3 things these historians could agree on is that they don't know. So when we as association started, we said, listen here, let's call it Chenin Blanc. This is what it is. We don't know where Steen is from. We don't know why they call it Steen. Yes, there's a little story, and for some people that wants to be a bit off the wall, it will work. But as a mainstream, let's call it Chenin Blanc. That's what it is, and make it dry. So, and I think you will find that for 99% of South African Chenins, it will say Chenin Blanc on the label, and it won't even say dry or semi-sweet, because we automatically assume that it will be dry.
Gotcha. Which is a big advantage for sure. Guys, while we're on the topic, can we talk about the parentage or lineage of the grape? Like, what is Chenin Blanc? Does Chenin Blanc have parents? What's the Blanc and what's the Chenin? Can we talk about the history of the grape a little bit?
Yeah. So it's the grape is probably come from a mix of breed between the Savagnin and the Sauvignonas. The Savagnin is from Jura, and the Sauvignonas it's come from Portugal or Spain, something like that. So that's a genetic origin of the Chenin Blanc. Then there is many story about where it's come from exactly. Some people say it's come from Anjou. Some people will say it's come from the Touraine or southwest of France. So there is many story about that. But we don't know yet exactly where the grape come from. We know the genetic origin now because we can measure it, but we don't know the real origin, geographic origin. And what is sure, it's in the 16th, 17th century, we can read on an old book. They start to talk about Chenin Blanc. They call him Blanc d'Anjou or different name, but we know it's Chenin Blanc. And then that's this grape developed in all the Loire Valley, and I don't know, but probably through the Huguenot, or I don't know, probably they bring the grape in South Africa. So, Bruwer, do you know more about the story in South Africa?
Very much so. Our story have a very clear beginning. The VOC wanted to start a halfway station in the southern tip of Africa for the spice route to the east. And in 1652, they sent down 3 ships, and Jan van Riebeeck was the sort of head of that party. When they left Haarlem in Holland, they had no vines on board. And they stopped along the coast of La Rochelle, which is at the sort of coast side of the Loire Valley. And they picked up, and what I must say is in those days that a VOC captain could do a lot of things, but he got arrested if he did not document what went on the ship and off the ship. That was probably a bigger crime than doing anything else. So, and that's how we find out. So he picked up Chenin Blanc, Semillon, Muscat de Frontignac, and Muscat d'Alexandria. Those are the 4 varieties that they came over with. So we know by the ship records of those boats that the first 4 varieties planted in South Africa were Chenin, Semillon, Muscat d'Alexandria, Muscat de Frontignac. So that was planted in 1654, 2 years after they arrived, and the first wine they made from it was 1656, which we consider as the birth of our industry, is then in 1656. So in the beginning, the Muscat varieties, and in particular Semillon, became very dominant. And in the 1700s, probably 90% of the Cape was planted with Semillon. Where Chenin Blanc really made a change was in the late 1800s, when the KWV was formed because there was overproduction, and they started distilling this overproduction. And then they soon realized that Chenin Blanc was exceptionally good in distilling brandy. And that's where we started on a bigger scale planting Chenin Blanc. And by the 60s, Chenin Blanc made up 1/3 of the total surface of grapes in South Africa. And today it has dropped down to about 18%, but it's still more than 50% of the total Chenin Blanc planted in the world. So, and then I think you can say that from 2000 onwards, people went for Chenin Blanc as a quality wine and saw it in the same sort of sense as Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc. And, you know, I always said that in South Africa, we took a thoroughbred horse, we trained it like a donkey, and we couldn't figure out why we're not winning the Kentucky Derby. So what you need to do is, if you got a thoroughbred horse, train it like a thoroughbred horse, and then you got a shot at winning the Derby. And I think that's what we've done. That was the mindset. There was nothing wrong with Chenin Blanc, is how we treated it in South Africa. And that started changing in the 2000s. And 21 years later, look at the results. Probably, if you look at white wine, more than half of all our accolades internationally comes from Chenin Blanc.
All right, so Bru, thank you. I do want to ask Vincent, you know, in the Loire, what percentage of plantings are Chenin now-ish?
It's often people want to know, you know, where's the link between Chenin, South Africa and France. There are lots of links, but it's so much easier to say the differences, because the soil is different, the climate is different, the growing season is not the same length. We have much less sunshine hours in France, so it's such different parameters.
Yeah, but as I say, Bruwer, it's this grape can really adapt and produce very good wine in both places. So it's difficult to compare the two countries, but in both places they do great wine.
And I think from the 2 years ago, there was the first ever Chenin Blanc conference that was held in France, and one of the things that came out of that was just how adaptable Chenin Blanc is. If you look at all the different terroir climates and areas in the world, even in South Africa, where there are such vastly different areas, grape growing regions, and how just adaptable Chenin Blanc actually is.
But if you I think it's, you find the Chenin Blanc close to the sea, more with more acidity in South Africa, which is more in the profile and aromatic on balance, more closer to our style in the Loire Valley. Then if, for example, we do Chenin Blanc in Swartland, and it's really the opposite of the style for me on the condition. And sometimes if you do blind tests, sometimes you can I would say confuse, because it's never easy. But if you do confusion, it's more, I think, with Chenin Blanc from close to the sea,
Coastal region.
Then you get more acidity, freshness in the Chenin Blanc in South Africa, and it's more close to the Loire style. Yeah, I don't know if brewers agree with that, but
what do you think, Brew?
I think maybe to add, definitely the coastal areas in general is cooler, but also if you go altitude, it has the same effect as, so you find certain regions, they might not be close to the coast, but they got altitude, and they also produce chenins of that sort of fine acidity. For me personally, the difference between a Loire Chenin and a South African or a Western Cape Chenin, which in itself has a lot of different variances like in the Loire. But if I look at broadly, I think the composition of the acidity in the Loire is more malic acid and less tartaric, where in South Africa it's more tartaric and more less malic acid. And that in itself tastes very different. So, the composition of the acidities are different due to the climate. So you will taste on the palate that freshness part and the length of acidity are different. And then, the thing, I think that certain areas are more to South Africa, but if you go to Savennier, I don't think there's one place in South Africa that I can compare with a Savennier. It's just completely different. But I think in general is that Chenin Blanc flavors, you get that minerality, you get a bit of that citrus liminess. There's that, and also then the white and yellow fruit are there. So there's definitely overlapping, but I think the big difference to me lie in the acidity and that tension in the wine, which obviously the Loire has more of because of its cooler climate, and South Africa maybe doesn't have that always, but it has a little bit more weight and texture in the mid palate. I think that's the sort of main difference, but that's not exclusive, that's just in broad terms.
That's awesome, Brew. All right, I have a question for both of you. Vincent, when did you start? What was your first vintage?
For my own wine, it was in 1999.
All right. So
but he made his first wine when he was 14 years old.
But if you look at your businesses, the two of you together, your timeline's almost identical. I mean, you're 2000 in Brew and you're 99. So you guys have been at this for 20 to 22 years. Looking down the road, what do you see in the next 20? What do you see as you look down the road? Vincent, you said something really interesting earlier about, well, I didn't have a choice. It's the law. It has to be Chenin, right? Well, we just saw the laws change in Bordeaux. You just saw the addition of a lot of new grapes being in Bordeaux. Global warming is affecting everything we do. Whether you acknowledge it or not, you can see. How do you see Chenin and the Loire changing in the next 20 years? And same for you, Brew, and you can mix into this too, your hopes and dreams. You guys are pioneers. You guys are at the forefront of what you're doing. Man, what does it look like in 20 years for both of you? You want to lead the way, Brew?
I think that because Chenin Blanc is so adaptable and you can make it in various different soil types and climates very successfully, I think that our variety will be very well suited. And if I say that, if you compare something to Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa compared to Chenin, I think Chenin Blanc is much more adjusted and will adapt better to warmer conditions, where I don't necessarily think Sauvignon Blanc will be able to do the same. What I think will happen, and it's starting to happen, is that Chenin Blanc is moving to more coastal regions, traditionally areas where they thought it's better for Sauvignon Blanc. They're starting to plant Chenin as well now, like Walker Bay, Elgin, Grape, which was traditionally very cold for apple farming. And what also will happen is that Chenin Blanc will be started planting in, for instance, an area like Stellenbosch. Will move to the southern slopes, which is a slightly higher, and the coolest spots within that region, which is already busy happening. I'm planting Chenin Blanc on that already. So I think that, you know, the most important thing is also that from a vineyard point of view, how you manage the vineyard, to have full cover crop, to keep your soil temperature down, change your pruning. We've already started experimenting with that 12 years ago, and we've managed to keep acidity and sugar levels low in certain vineyards, although the temperature has increased. So it's going to be planting in cooler spots in the future, but also managing those that you already have from a viticultural point of view by, for instance, cover nighttime irrigation to prevent your wine from dehydration during a heat wave. I'm just using quick things that come to mind, but it's a total adjustment from that. And I think that, you know, if you haven't thought so, or those people that haven't been experimenting with this, they, you know, it's getting quite late in the day to start. So we very much thought about it, and we've made our plans. We're implementing it already, and I think that the Chenin Blanc will stay the main stream white wine variety in South Africa because of the adaptability and because of smart growers that's already adjusting and preempting what's going to come.
Yeah, I think in 20 years our climate will be as South Africa now.
No, we track these stories pretty honestly, and you know, I'm drinking Cabernet from Germany, and I mean, it's happening. All this stuff is happening. We have producers in the Southern Rhone that are saying Grenache might not be there in 20 years. It might just be too hot. And I do think, hearing you both, you have a huge advantage in just how, for lack of a better word, sturdy and adaptable Chenin Blanc really is. You know, you're not, it's awesome to hear. It's exciting to hear. I'm glad you're not envisioning yourself being a great Syrah producer in 20 years, Vincent. So we have a pretty awesome connectivity between our two portfolios in France and South Africa. You know, Vincent and Tanya, you make wine in both. Brew, any hopes and dreams of ever making some Chenin in the Loire?
Yes, I think temporary it's been derailed quite with a hot pace, but you know, you never know what will happen. You know, I mean, we're very well aware that, you know, that's the home for us. You know, that's where Chenin Blanc comes from, and you know, the Chenin Blanc faithful years in South Africa. You know, they're all sort of, I think, in the back of their mind, wouldn't mind, you know, making a bit of Chenin in the Loire. I definitely so. You know, if the opportunity comes, I'll definitely grab it. But you know, everything happens on its time, and everything happens as it should. So you know, I never try to force anything. And you know, if that opportunity comes, I'll definitely not drop the ball. I'll take it with both hands.
I feel like right now I would settle for just being able to go to the Loire. I don't need to plant the grow anything or start a business. I just want to be there. All right, so can we spend a little bit of time helping the fans of your wines maybe look at your wine through different eyes, right? So if I'm a fan of Raats family Chenin and Vincent Careme or Terre Brûlée, help us understand in your portfolio, you know, what is Bring It Home Tonight, have it, enjoy it, it's the new release, love it, and what are some ways of looking at aging your wines? You know, do you have vintages where you're just like, you know what, I wish my customer would buy a 6-pack of Old Vine 16 and, enjoy them, but put away 3 for like 5 years, right? Or put away 3 for 10 years. What would you guys tell your fans? How do you look at aging your wines? How do you look at what's drink now? I mean, can you give everybody some expert tips on how to look at your whole portfolio? And if there is some interest in aging them, how to do it, when to do it, how to do it, which ones? Maybe some secret inside knowledge?
Sure. I think that vintage there becomes very important, and like you say, Rob, that sort of. But if you look in the last after '94 in South Africa, when we sort of were allowed back into the international market, there's 3 vintages that stood out: 2009, 2015, 2017, and I want to go big. I want to say soon 2001 will be added to that, because 2001 was for me almost a mirror vintage of 2009. It had the same sort of temperature, it had the same rainfall in the winter. There was just, and also the wines that came out just reminds me of 2009. But those vintages are always, when you have that, so 15 and 17 probably more recent, but those vintages you can definitely buy them and put them away. Chenin Blanc has a wonderful potential, of aging. Those vintages you can probably go 10 years plus, but what happens when you do age them is they tend to get a little bit more richness. They might lose a little bit of that initial fruit, but what you get is you get more a floral character, you get that lovely spiciness coming into play, but you get that viscosity and richness just becomes more prominent. Usually these good vintages mature well because they got very good acidities, and that acidity just becomes a little bit more softer and integrated, where they might, in a young wine, they might have stand out a bit, but with a bit of age, they integrate even better, and that's what gives them that aging potential. So I would definitely, the 09, we had a vertical tasting of Chenin Blanc in 2019 from the Raats Old Vine Chenin, and we tasted basically from 2002 at that stage till 2017, and it was very interesting. And people had to vote their top 3 wines, and 09 came first, 06 came second, and 17 came third. So these they definitely on good vintages improve. But I mean, in South Africa, I think there is definitely vintages that you have to be vintage specific when it comes to putting them away, and those are my recommendations: 9, 15, and 17. You can't go wrong.
We just started a new educational for our clients, and it's just called like 5 wines we're drinking right now, like 5 wines in the portfolio you can't miss, and we're taking those special vintages and trying to explain to everyone, buy 6, buy 12, and go on a 5-year journey with this wine. And I just did a presentation to the Harvard Wine Society, and for the first time ever, they got to try South African wine. This is Grand Cru Burgundy, First Growth Bordeaux crowd, and we say buy yourself. I wish I had one, like buy a little notebook, right? And just keep it in your kitchen. And if you love a wine, I still have 1 bottle of 09 Old Vine Chenin left. I don't even think it's sick. I think that was even before we started calling it Old Vine.
That's correct. Yes, indeed. 100% right.
But have a little notebook, and these things have a life. They are living, breathing things. And take notes on the year it was released. It could just be 2 sentences. And then open one a year for 4 years, or one a year for 5 years, and start to go on a journey with these products, because it's amazing to live it that way. It's amazing to kind of in your mind be like, oh, I remember when '09 was released. You know, when you're buying real wine, and you know we're on a big crusade about no agribusiness, but when you're buying real wine made by humans that really love their land, I mean, these are long stories. These are great, great stories. How about you, Vincent? How are you looking at aging your wines?
I think you can age the Vouvray in general quite well. It's depend maybe also of course the vintage. Some of the vintage have got much more potential to age than some other, and also maybe the wine. If we take the spring, for example, it's a wine. I think it's interesting to drink this wine in 5 years, because we are looking for more fruit style and easy drinking wine. Then if you take the Clos, for example, you can keep for 15 years, and it's going to be good. So it's depend also the vineyard, the way we grow the grape, and the soil, and the winemaking process, and everything will make it also difference in the capacity to the wine to age or not, and of course the vintage.
I think Vouvray's also got the advantage because it's been tried and tested. You know, we've got some of the estates like Domaine Huet and Philippe Fourreau, Clos Naudin, where we've been able to see and taste old vintages, you know, the world over. But often those wines are the sweeter wines in the past. I think the oldest I've tasted was 1921, but Vincent, you tasted
1893.
In 1893, which was
yeah, that's a sweet wine, and this wine was put in a cave in the rock, you know, and that this wine never moved. So the condition of aging was perfect, and after 50 or 60 or 70 years, the wine is still live. But it's a really special condition, on specific vintage. But if we can talk in general, Vouvray's got very big potential for aging, and I think it's for the dry style, it can be drink 5-10 years in general, and of course some vintage you can keep longer.
I think also in people often in France, they know that Vouvray white wines can be aged, but it's not always so well known on the export market, and people will easily buy a white Burgundy, pay a lot of money for it to lay it down, and it will be a great wine. But I challenge people also, for example, Le Clos, it's a bit more expensive, but it's a wine you can also, if you're looking for something to put away and to hopefully wow people within 10 years time, in certain vintages, that it's just fantastic. And personally, that's what we did when our children were born each year. 2008, we were with great vintage. We've got sort of a barrel of that for our son. And in France, it's quite common. We often have people say, look, my son or my daughter was born in this year, or my grandchild, and people will come and buy Vouvrays to lay down and to keep for the children for their birth year.
What about your bubbles, guys? How do you look at aging the bubble?
I can tell you just a story of that's the height of optimism. 2002 was a great year. Vincent and I hadn't actually met yet, but he's decided that the Ancestral, which is his natural sparkling wine, was so wonderful he was going to bottle a whole bunch of Magnums and keep them for his wedding. The only problem was he didn't have a girlfriend. We hadn't met yet. So that's how good he knew that he could age it. It was going to be good. He could get married 10 years later, and it would still be okay. We ended up meeting and getting married in 2006, so we drank it.
Brew, we know right now, if you're in the U.S. market, if you can get your hands on 17, get them, right? Like that's the magic. Yeah. I feel the same thing. If you can get your hands on 15 MR, we want it. And then keep an eye out on the 21s in due course. How about you, Vincent and Tanya? Right now, if you think about the wines that are kind of in your commercial mix right now, any advice that's like, grab it, if you can get it, grab it and buy an extra case?
It would be Le Clos, but just because it's you can drink it now, but I would buy it. I mean, obviously we want people to drink and buy more, but if I can just, from a personal point of view, if you can get your hands on Le Clos, buy it, put it away, buy 6 bottles, drink one in 5 years time, another one in 6, you know, and just see how it evolves and what it can do. And if you want to keep it for even longer, I would absolutely go with it.
I love it. We all have routines when we buy wine. And for me, it's often, well, I usually just, I go downstairs and get it. But, you know, if you're having spaghetti and meatballs, I mean, how can you not go grab a Chianti Classico, right? Or if you're going to have a big steak, I'm going to go grab, you know, a Northern Rhone Syrah or a big Cabernet, you know, something that can do it. What are those go-to meals where you're like, it is Chenin or nothing at all?
Rob, I can shoot on this one, and I have to be wine specific here. If you drink the Raats original Chenin Blanc, you know, it's very simple. Oysters, mussels, and you can even use a bit of cream and white wine sauce with your mussels. It works. And then sushi. Those 3 things is Raats original Chenin Blanc. It's no-brainer. It just works. When you look at something like the Raats Old Vine Chenin Blanc, you will definitely go game fish, tuna. You can even do duck d'orange with that. Works very well. The acidity and that citrus just picks each other up. You know, as I said, game. And you can also do light curry styles. Like a Thai curry, not too spicy. I wouldn't go sort of seriously heavy full-on curries, but light curries like a Thai curry or a light Indian style curry, you know, just works very, and vegetarian, you know, a lentil or a chickpea a curry, perfect. It just works. It just picks up. And you know, one thing about Chenin Blanc in general is that I do a lot of food and wine evenings and pairings with a lot of chefs all over the world. But, you know, when the chefs say, oh, you brought some Chenin Blanc, they all smile like that because Chenin Blanc actually covers a wide range of foods, probably one of the most food-friendliest wines in the world because it has that acidity and it has minerality. So you can have it with an oyster or a mussel you know, but it also have richness and concentration and structure in the mid palate, so you can have it with duck and with tuna and with light curry, spicy food as well. So, I mean, I always tell the waiters, if you're not sure on a white wine, pick Chenin. You probably won't get it. You won't get it wrong.
I love it. How about you guys?
I think Bruwer absolutely hit it on the head when he said that, you know, when the chef knows it's Chenin that's going to be served, they're happy because and it's the same thing in France. You know, where they like to have a glass of wine with every different course, and you can have 8 different courses. I would, you know, even challenge, there's some chefs that have done only with Chenin Blanc, and you can do it from starter straight through dessert. I think my favorite pairing would be Vincent makes scallops with a leek reduction, and that with the sec, with our dry wine is just absolutely marvelous. Or else a apple tart, sort of a traditional French style apple tart for dessert with a sec. And I also love, you know, in France you eat cheese at the end of the meal, but you know, you can, whenever stage of the meal, when you have your cheese, an aged Comté, a 24 months aged Comté with Le Clos is absolutely delicious. So but Bruwer stole all my favorite dishes. He mentioned them all. It's quite
well, I forgot the cheese. And I must say, Chenin Blanc and, you know, white semi-hard cheeses. It's just absolutely awesome.
Yes, and as you said,
it just works.
I think
the light curries and the Asiatic dishes, sort of sweet and sour, something with a wok. No, but Bruwer stole all our ideas.
You hit a huge one, because the secret weapon here at Thanksgiving, you know, I think any holiday where the table is full with lots of people and a million dishes, you know, back when we could have lots of people for the holidays, at my house, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, the big, big, big feast holidays, it's Chenin Blanc and Cab Franc. You can't go wrong. If there's 9 different dishes on that table, those 2 wines have you covered from beginning to end. And I will tell you, like American apple pie on Thanksgiving with Chenin Blanc, glorious.
Yeah.
Like glorious. So I would say when you ordering sushi, no brainer, right? Ordering Thai food, no brainer for Chenin. You know, I think for people that are looking for that go-to pairing, it's easy. Brew, Tanya, Vincent, anything. I can't stress enough. I feel like I'm lucky to be here with you guys. I mean, you are at the vanguard of what you do. You are passionate about what you do. Your quality is second to none as far as we're concerned. So as we get ready to launch on Chenin today, anything you want to say? Any parting thoughts? Anything we didn't cover?
You know, whether you drink Chenin Blanc from France or South Africa, or I'm talking about Chenin Blanc in general, you know, what makes Chenin Blanc so amazing and wonderful, and why I believe everybody should at least drink some Chenin Blanc in their cellar or order it from a restaurant, is that a lot of people like a wine like Sauvignon Blanc because of its aromatics and it's sort of wow in your face, but it doesn't always have the structure and the weight and the length. And there's a lot of Chardonnay drinkers out there that doesn't worry so much about the nose, but they want that flavor and that concentration. And so if I can put it in perspective, you've got a Sauvignon Blanc drinker or a Chardonnay drinker. One is light and fruit and the other one is more flavor. And Chenin Blanc actually is right in the middle. It has the aromatics, which you can bring a Sauvignon Blanc drinker to understand, but it also have that weight and texture and concentration and fullness that you get from a Chardonnay. So you basically got both these elements in one wine. And that's why I think Chenin is just so fantastic, is that you can pair it with food, because you got fruit and you got weight in the palate. You can just drink it on its own because it gives you both. And that's why, you know, I think one day everybody will drink Chenin Blanc, because it eventually points to that point where you have one wine, but it covers the whole flavor spectrum of what you actually like in wine.
Love it.
Yeah, true.
And I think for Chenin Blanc is Vincent's a man of few words. I think also for Chenin Blanc, whether you sort of a new wine drinker or just learning about wine and starting out, I think Chenin Blanc's got so much to offer. Whether you now consider yourself sort of a wine connoisseur and a collector, there are Chenin Blancs for that as well. So I think it keeps its identity. You always stay with a Chenin Blanc identity, but it's got so much depth and length, and as Bruwer said, it's a completely different profile to Sauvignon Blanc. So I would just challenge everyone that is not yet a Chenin Blanc fan or drinker, just try it, because once you do, you'll never regret it. You'll come back for more.
100%.